Hey guys, sorry I cannot be with you today. We are going to go over deductive reasoning just really quickly. Indirect proofs, ignore that on here. We will go through what that is together one day in class soon. So, looking ahead, we will have a quiz, the second one on Friday. Remember, I told you that between your two quizzes, I will take the higher score. So, we won't dump that into Power School quite yet. When I see you next, we will go over your first quiz. Okay, I'll open those up and we'll go over like common mistakes. I want to do that when I'm with you. So today, deductive reasoning is what we're talking about. Technically, this is not a page in your notes. Oop. So it's up to you if you want to write anything down. It's not one of your notes pages. We're just going to do a few quick examples. If you want to copy anything in your notes, you can. Like I said, there will probably be like one question on this. Honestly, I think you guys are really going to think this is common sense, but feel free. Like I figured on the back of like your notes cover sheet, that's a blank page in your packet. You could jot anything there if you want to. That's totally up to you. All right, so deductive reasoning, technically this is lesson 6. We're not going to make a huge deal of it. We did see this image right here on our inductive reasoning lesson handout, which was lesson 4. So remember inductive reasoning down here. It started with like a special pattern, like a certain set of numbers, and then we made like a generalization. So it went that way. And we were like, oh, we're adding 2 every time or whatever. Deductive reasoning goes the opposite way. You can see like a little visual. I always like that. That like helps me make sense of it. So it's giving you like a generalization, and I'll give you a couple examples. And then we like apply that generalization to a specific case, a person's life, whatever it is. So there's 2 kind of like laws, they call them here, just like ways of reasoning. The first one, and that's all we're doing, you guys. I'm just going to show you these 2 laws, and then I'll show you an example of each. And then you're just going to practice a few problems on your own. So the first law is called the law of detachment. The law of detachment, so here's like a little snip of what the book describes it as. It's a law of logic that states if a conditional statement and its hypothesis are true, then the conclusion is true. So remember on Friday, we talked about conditional statements like if then, and we always wrote them like this, like P to Q. So that's hypothesis to conclusion. So here's what they're saying, like if the whole statement is true, and if you detach, hence why it's called law of detachment, if you detach the hypothesis, the P, and you say, hey, okay, well, P is true. Well, if the whole thing's true and the first part's true, then the conclusion is true. So all they're doing is taking a true statement, detaching the hypothesis and conclusion, and you can just conclude that like those 2 things detached are also true. Maybe that was really wordy. Maybe it wasn't. Okay, let me show you an example that they give in the book. Maybe. Here we go. Okay, so example, and the directions do say, assume that the set of given information is true. Okay, you'll believe it, but let's assume that it's true. Oh, okay, maybe we won't believe it, but we're going to go with it. So this is true. It says, if Alicia scores 85 or greater on her test, she will earn an A as her final grade. Maybe she did the grade calculator, like that's the score that she needed to earn an A overall. Okay, so Alicia scores 89 on her test. What can we logically conclude? So this is an example of the law of detachment. Here's how. So the statement, if Alicia scores 85 or greater on her test, then she will earn an A as her final grade. Okay, so that's P. She scores 85 or greater. Q is she will earn an A. Okay, now they're detaching P from the statement. Well, look, the hypothesis happened. Here's P. What can we logically conclude? We can conclude that Q is going to happen. So guess what? Go Alicia, she's going to earn an A as her final grade. I don't even know if you guys need to write that down. I feel like I wouldn't have to say a word. You would read that and be like, okay, duh, that's what's going to happen. So I don't know. You decide if you need to jot any of that down. Maybe like look at the examples, honestly. And like while you're doing it's 7 questions. While you're doing the examples, if you're struggling, maybe come back and write stuff down. It's up to you guys. So, okay, the second law, and this is the last one, is called the law of syllogism. Kind of a random name, but here's what it says. So, and you've got more like P's and Q's, but don't be scared of the letters. The law of syllogism is a law of logic, so it's just like reasoning through, thinking about things, that states that given 2 true conditionals, so 2 different if-then statements that are true, with the conclusion of the first being the hypothesis of the second, then there's a third statement that has the hypothesis of the first and the conclusion of the second, which is a very wordy little law there, you guys. Honestly, the P's and Q's, like it really helps it make sense. So look, here's what they're saying. You've got like one statement right there, P to Q, and then they're gonna like use different letters just to signify like a different statement, but it's Q to R. And both of those are true. So if you notice like the pattern here, the conclusion of the first one is the same as the hypothesis of the second one. When that happens, it's like you can almost ignore the Q's in the middle, and we can conclude, if I just jump from the beginning to the end, we can conclude that P to R is also true. Maybe the letters make it worse. Maybe they make it make sense. To me, they make it make more sense than the words do. Let me show an example though. So here's the law of syllogism. It says, assume that the set of conditionals is true. Okay, everything has to be true for this to flow. What can we conclude? And again, you guys, I bet you could reason through this without even knowing that this has a name. But if Kenji plays the trumpet, then he plays a brass instrument. If he plays a brass instrument, then he is a member of the marching band. So what can we conclude about good old Kenji and his life here? Okay, so first statement. Kenji plays a trumpet, P. He plays a brass instrument, Q. Okay, and then second statement, we'll use a different color. He plays a brass instrument. Okay, look, that's the repeated part. So instead of calling that P again, that's Q, because that was the conclusion of the previous sentence. And here's the R they're talking about. So the brass instrument part in the middle, you guys, that was repeated. That's the same. It's almost like I ignore the brass instrument part, so I can go from this to this. So, okay, yeah, if he plays a brass instrument, he plays a trumpet, he's a member of the marching band. So that's our conclusion. Type this out so you can see it. We can conclude if Kenji plays the trumpet, we're just ignoring the brass instrument part here. If he plays the trumpet, then he is a member of the marching band. Jump straight from like the beginning of this thing to the very end of this thing. Okay, so that's deductive reasoning in a nutshell. Those are the 2 laws that you use to reason deductively. And yeah, you're taking a generalization and applying it to a certain person is the whole like idea of it. So here's your assignment, you guys. On Canvas, there's a deductive reasoning math Excel assignment. It's 7 questions. So do that. Hit similar question if you're missing it. Just like the point is to like just be thinking. Honestly, that's all I want you guys to do. Just think through it. I hope you'll think most of them are common sense and you can like reason through it pretty easily. But just think, like quietly read them to yourself. Think about it. That's the goal of this. Once you finish and get 100 on that, once you finish, if there's anything you need to catch up on, please do that. We will have the Unit 1 test next week. It might be Wednesday, it might be Friday, maybe Thursday. I don't know. We'll see. But it'll be like towards the middle to the end of next week. So catch up on stuff because once we finish Unit 1, we're full steam ahead Unit 2. I'm not going to want to like answer many questions looking back. So see if somebody around you can help you. Yeah, so catch up on your work, use the time to be productive. All right, we will see you guys. Bye.